Hello everybody, this is Jack from the Ottawa Senators Outlook, and this is a video talking about Shane Pinto with his RFA status because he's still not with a contract. We are around 3 weeks away until training camp, almost probably 2 by now. And apparently both sides are not close on a new contract, and I'm going to go over it. It's been a while since I've made a video, talk about the dog days of the offseason. Nothing's happened ever since that Erik Karlsson trade, to be quite honest with you. So we're going to go over what we think is going to happen to Shane Pinto, what his contract might look like, and if they need to move someone out, who will it be? And I'll give you my thoughts on that. So Shane Pinto was a rookie this year. He was still in rookie status. He had 20 goals he was a middle six center because obviously Josh Norris was out for the year. So he had a total of 20 goals, 15 assists for 35 points in 82 games. And if you want me to be honest with you, I think that's a really good number of stats, to be quite honest with you. But again, how is that going to translate to his next contract? So Elliotte Friedman talked about it on NHL Network yesterday, and he talked about the Senators probably moving somebody out and him not signing for under $1 million, which obviously that's kind of obvious to me. I don't think he's going to sign for $1 million either. Even though they have like $895K in cap space, that doesn't mean that he's going to sign for that. So, however, Elliotte Friedman did bring this up, and I'm going to kind of disagree with him on this one. He said they're going to try to move out money so he can try to sign for 2.5, which is what Elliotte Friedman thinks he's worth. And he pretty much had some comparable players, didn't really list them, but talked about comparable players and how they make almost that similar amount of money. And I think a perfect comparable for that is Noah Cates from the Philadelphia Flyers. Had a good year, 2.625 million, I think his contract was. But I feel like that's kind of where I'm going to disagree on Elliotte Friedman, and I'm going to tell you why. Ever since signing Tarasenko to that $5 million contract, they had like $32K left in cap space. He sent really Greg down, and that's how they have $895K now. But the problem with it is they're going to have to move someone out so they have a little bit more cap space and more flexibility to sign Shane Pinto. What is he going to get? That's a good question, because if we were able to have enough cap space to be able to sign Shane Pinto, there's no doubt in my mind he would be able to sign for the $2.5 million. I think he's worth that too. I would say he would get it on a 3 or 4 year deal at $2.5 million. If we had the cap space to make that work, I would no doubt be willing to give that to him. But we don't have cap space. So if we're going to talk about signing him to a contract, think of Kevin Labanc out of the San Jose Sharks, because he really wasn't able to get as much of a contract as he was worth. However, they made it up for him and paid him a little more on his next contract. They had to bridge it out. So that's kind of what I see for Shane Pinto. I think it's going to be on a 2-year deal at 1.75 to like 1.8 million. I think the Sens have a lot of leverage here, but hopefully they take advantage of leverage, because last time they did, it was like with Matthew Sheehan. Joe Sakic had no leverage, and he almost gave him the same package that he wanted. So hopefully Dorian can be a little bit smart on this one. I think he will be, but again, let's kind of hope. He's under a microscope from Michael Andlauer. We'll just say that. But I think if we're moving someone out, it's going to have to be someone over $2 million, obviously, if we're trying to sign him for like 1.75, 1.8. However, I think it might start with this. Parker Kelly is still on the NHL lineup for us, who's making $762,500. I do think he will be hitting the waiver wire, and maybe he does get traded for like a 7th round pick or something like that. I highly doubt it. But I do think he will go on waivers. Hopefully somebody picks him up, because I really think he's a weak link on this team, even though DJ likes his players like he did with Nikita Zaitsev and everyone. I don't think Parker Kelly will be on this team for much longer. So expect him to hit the waiver wire. In addition to that, there's 2 realistic options, and I would say maybe even 3, but I think the third is kind of unlikely. The options to get rid of for the Sens to make the room for Shane Pinto are Matthew Joseph, Erik Brannstrom, and the unlikely one people throw it around is Dominik Kubalik. I think Kubalik is the most unlikely because if Dorian is trying to keep his job, he's going to try to save face and keep Kubalik because he was a centerpiece in the Alex DeBrincat trade to Detroit, which obviously kind of blew up in their faces when he said he didn't want to sign the extension in Ottawa, even though they made that trade to help bolster their playoff chances, which it kind of did in a sense, but we did end up missing. And then he didn't want to sign an extension, and we had to trade him. So it was tough on that sense, but Kubalik isn't the worst consolation prize. We had no leverage, so we weren't able to get much. We got a first-round pick. We got Kubalik. If you want to be honest, I'm fine with it. It's all right. Kubalik is not going to be on the third line with us. He's going to improve that depth scoring. He had 20 goals last year, 25 assists for 45 points. He's a consistent 20-goal scorer, in my opinion. He had 30 goals in his rookie year in 68 games, which was when the COVID-19 pandemic kind of took effect, and obviously the NHL season was on pause, obviously. But even though he scored 30, I'm not expecting him to score 30 on the third line with Shane Pinto, most likely. And we're going to talk about the other two guys. Matthew Joseph, he would be on the third line if he sticks around. If not, that would be Ridly Greig. But and I see armchair GMs talking about this all the time because they're like, oh, because Joseph's making $2.95 million, he's the obvious one out. And in some ways, I can agree with you. He's making the most money. The contract doesn't look great, but he still has value to us. And let me have that sink in a little bit, to us, because to most other teams, he's going to be considered a cap dump and has negative value. So I think it's super unlikely. Plus, he has 3 years left on his contract. If he had like 1 or 2 years left at that same cap hit, and if he had to just offload like a second-round pick or a top prospect, I think it would probably be done already. And plus, I think he's going to bounce back. I think his even strength and defensive forward stats were pretty good last year. The only thing he did not do was score goals, and none of them were at even strength. They all were, I think all of them were shorthanded. So he is a crucial piece of that penalty kill, and that's why he was so good last year. Even though he did get injured, we did have a good penalty kill. We had great special teams last year, so I don't want to mess with that too much. And now we're going to talk about Erik Brannstrom, making $2 million on a 1-year contract. That was signed the day of free agency. He could possibly be a guy on the power play, but the Sens have no room for that. They have Thomas Chabot and Jacob Chychrun, definitely. Jake Sanderson, that might be a maybe. We might have 4 forwards on each, and then Chabot and Chychrun on the 2 power play units, but Jake Sanderson could be in there. Erik Brannstrom has no room on this team, in my opinion. $2 million, especially when you have an up-and-coming Tyler Kleven, who, for the most part, looks ready for the Ottawa Senators. And he's only on his entry-level deal, making slightly over $900,000. That should give us a little bit of cap space, along with Parker Kelly, so that's like over $1.8 million when you bring up Tyler Kleven. So there's kind of your money to give to Shane Pinto. So if I were to give it a guess, I would say Erik Brannstrom gets moved out, only because his contract is easier, and he had a really good year last year. And he has some value around. We could definitely get a second-round pick, in my opinion, or at the very, very least a third-rounder, but I think some teams could be willing to pay a second-rounder for Erik Brannstrom. So we've got to keep an eye out soon. We'll see what happens with that. But again, Erik Brannstrom making $2 million, I feel like that's a little bit of an overpayment for a bottom pair defenseman. He's too good to be on the bottom pair. He can get a top 4 role somewhere else. For example, like the Anaheim Ducks. I know they're trying to get some D-men going in there. They have Chris Fowler. They have Jamie Drysdale. They brought in Radko Gudas. They have Ilya Lyubushkin. They have Robert Haig and a couple other guys. Maybe Erik Brannstrom can help out their defense core. I don't know if the Ducks would be interested, but again, I think if the Sens are trying to move out a guy, most likely Brannstrom, to a team that kind of needs a D-man, a two-way D-man too, he's really valuable. So I could definitely see a team maybe like Anaheim be interested in a guy like Erik Brannstrom. A couple other teams maybe. I'm just throwing it out there. I could maybe see a team like the San Jose Sharks. I doubt it, but a team that kind of needs a little bit of defense. I would say the Chicago Blackhawks, but they have a ton of prospects that are left shot defensemen. So maybe they give their young guys a little bit of opportunity there. But again, we'll see. I think he's definitely in the stage to be a top 4 defenseman at the moment because he's he's too good to be a bottom pair. I'll just put it that way. He's a borderline top 4 guy. He could definitely play top 4 minutes there, like Anaheim. And again, they do have a few picks. They have Boston's second rounder this year in the Hampus Lindholm trade. They have San Jose's third rounder and Pittsburgh's third rounder this year as well. So maybe if Anaheim was interested, maybe we get one of those picks. Maybe a young guy. One guy that kind of sticks out to me is Urho Vakanainen. Maybe, but I think if there's a guy to be moved out, I'm definitely going with Brandstrom. As for Matthew Joseph, again, I don't think teams are going to be interested in him. Even though he could bounce back, that contract does not look good, and teams are not going to look at it as a guy that could bounce back. They're going to look at it as a cap dump. And honestly, for Sens fans, I feel like we don't realize that. Even though he has value to us, he doesn't to all the other 31 teams. However, the only team I could see consider trading for Joseph as like a cap dump is the Chicago Blackhawks. But again, I think with the term that he still has on his contract, it's just going to be super, super, super tough to move him. And Shane Pinto, like I said, he might get a bridge deal like 1.75 to 1.8 mil, and then he could kind of secure more of a bag. He's looking for a raise, not a significant one, based on what I saw from reports and Elliot Friedman, but I think that's kind of fair. He just came off of his entry-level deal at $925K. 1.75 to 1.8 on like a 1 or 2 year deal, I think would be able to fit the bag perfectly for both sides. So again, let's hope both sides can get this done. Who's going to get moved out? We'll see. I doubt it's Kubalik. I doubt it's Joseph just because of his contract, and it's going to be difficult to move. And Erik Brannstrom, I feel like, is the one obviously out, especially with Tyler Kleven coming in, and he has some good value to him. So comment down below what you think, and future videos will be coming in the future. The season is starting to get back in session here. I'm going to do a standings video prediction. You don't want to miss that. I'll have my line combinations prediction video when the season gets closer as well. But for now, Jack from the Auto Center Zellick, and Go Sens Go.